Okay, so today's session won't be as long just cause I have a commitment, but we'll still go through as many questions as possible. And as always, I'll keep emphasizing that it's important to be able to know what kind of question you're dealing with, especially because reading and writing are combined. So you want to make sure that you know what section the question is from and also what kind of question it is, because that determines how you handle the question. So we've gone through almost all the questions in the first practice test. So this is why we're on the second one today. And the whole point is just to practice the different strategies, see what mistakes we can correct, and so on. And this should always be your approach when you're going through a practice test. Don't just go through it and end of story. You don't just go through it and mark it. You make sure you go through each question and ask yourself, okay, why did I get this wrong? Or maybe I guessed on this. Maybe I don't understand the type of question, or maybe I didn't understand the passage. And in that way, you're always trying to improve your score instead of just like practicing and practicing. Yeah. Okay, so the first questions are writing. Okay. Question 8 says the following text is from Georgia Douglas Johnson's 1922 poem Benediction. Okay, I went ahead of myself. Remember, the first thing is to see what kind of question it is, because that kind of guides how you read the passage, what you focus on, and yeah, it will just help you to save time, because you don't have to read the question, and then go back to the passage. So we're looking for the main purpose. We said the main purpose is the so what? So the subject of the story and what is being said about the subject. And this is a very short story, so it should be relatively easy to find it. So we know that this is a poem, Benediction, and it was written by Georgia Douglas. Okay. Go forth, my son, winged by my heart's desire. Great riches yet unknown await. Let me say that again. Go forth, my son, winged by my heart's desire. Great riches yet unknown await for your possession. I may not, if I would, retrace the way with you. My pilgrimage is through, but life is calling you. Okay, so I feel like the first line is very important because it says it's my son. So it kind of gives a context for um, who the poem is being written to. And there's a lot of um, similes in this poem, but still everything is connecting to the fact that it's like a father talking to his son. So, okay. So winged by my heart's desire, great chase and await your position, if I may not retrace the way with you. Life is calling you. So even though you don't like fully understand the whole thing, sometimes it's easy to just pick parts that you do understand and make sure that you're getting something that like applies to the whole thing and not just like one sentence or one line in the whole passage. Okay, so option A says to express hope that a child will have the same accomplishments as his parents did. B, to suggest that raising a child involves many struggles. C, to warn a child that he will face many challenges throughout his life. And D, to encourage a child to embrace the experiences that life will offer. So what do you
D.
guys think? B, to suggest
D.
that.
No, the other one. D.
D.
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay. So what's making you pick D?
It says go forth. It's spurring him on into action. It said the
Mm-hmm.
pilgrim is through, means he's already telling you that it's going to be tough, but life is calling you, like he's saying, press along nonetheless.
Yeah, that's great. I definitely agree with that. And I love how you picked certain points of the passage to like help. Like life is calling you. There's like go, great riches yet unknown, await your position. So it's like there's so much that's awaiting. And it would be easy to pick A just because of the hope part, and we know that it's a child, and the College Board does this a lot, where they get um just like maybe half of it is correct and the other half is wrong because there's nothing about accomplishments that the parents did. Just this last part makes it wrong. Okay, so yeah, so it's very easy to be misled by that, but you have to make sure that your answer is completely correct based on the points that you see. And as I said, this is a poem. You're not meant to understand every single word or sentence. So don't waste time trying to break it down. Just pick certain points that help you, but also just be sure not to only focus on one sentence and leave out the rest of the passage. Yeah. So any questions on this one? Okay, we move on. Question 9 is function of the underlined sentence in the text as a whole. So for this one, we're looking at one sentence, but it says in the text as a whole. And I'm always emphasizing about the key for function. Remember that the function is always tied to the main idea. It's kind of like a debate, and everything that the author says is meant to convince you of the motion or the main purpose of them having the debate. So you can't have function without main idea. That's very important. Do not forget that, because that will really help you. That will really help you as you look for your answer. Okay, so the first part will give us some context. It says the following text is adapted from Indian Boyhood, a 1902 memoir by Ohiesa, a Santi Dakota writer. In the text, Ohiesa recalls how women in his tribe harvested maple syrup during his childhood. So there's the context. The fact that the writer is remembering women harvesting maple syrup during his childhood. Okay. Now the women began to test the trees, moving leisurely among them, axe in hand, and striking a single quick blow to see if the sap would appear. The trees, like people, have their individual characters. Some were ready to yield up their lifeblood, while others were more reluctant. Now one of the birchen basins was set under each tree, and the hardwood chip driven deep into the cut which the axe had made. From the corners of his chip, at first drop by drop, then more freely, the sap trickled into the little dishes. Okay, this is an interesting passage. Okay, so we know what the context is, and we've read the passage, and the sentence is underlined. So it says it portrays the range of personality traits displayed by women as they work. B, it foregrounds the beneficial relationship between humans and maple trees. C, demonstrates how human behavior can be influenced by the natural environment. And D, elaborates an aspect of the maple trees that the women evaluate. So what do you guys think? Or if you know an answer that's definitely wrong, we could also do that, use elimination method. So feel free to unmute, or if you want to type in the chat, that's also fine. I'm monitoring.
Choice A is out of it.
Sorry?
Choice A is out of it.
Okay, A is out. Yeah, definitely. Because it's just off, right? It's not talking about, this part's not talking about characteristics of the trees. Oh, I mean of the women, sorry. Yeah. So A is out. So we have B, C, and D. Any clues?
All right, for clues. All right. Given that we know that A is out, D seems fitting, but I'm finishing evaluations.
Okay. Elaborate an aspect of the maple trees that the women evaluate. That's it. What's the last thing you said?
I said I'm reevaluating, ensuring that it looks fine.
Yeah, there's one part of D that's making me question it, right? Because it says that the women evaluate. Just that part, it's very small, because obviously it's an aspect of maple trees that we're talking about. But is it really the women evaluating, right? Because it says this is Ohiesa, this is the author who's remembering. And the women did that, and the men did that, and then this part just says the trees. So this is the author's opinion. And there's nothing about the women said, These are some things that can really help you, because the College Board, they'll never accidentally put something, and you have to keep that in mind. So even just this part saying it's the women evaluating it is enough to make it wrong. So I say we eliminate D, and we have B and C. For those who've joined us, for those who've just joined, we're going through a practice test, and we've just read through. So feel free to read through as we discuss the question. But so far, we've eliminated A and D, and we're trying to see B and C. Yeah. Jerome, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, my choice would be B.
B, okay. Foregrounds the beneficial relationship between humans and maple trees. Thank you. Does everyone agree with B or does anyone disagree with B? Okay. Would you like to explain what made you pick B?
Yes, what made me pick B is that, as B says, it foregrounds the beneficial relationship between humans and maple trees. And underlying sentence, it says that the trees, like people, have their individual characteristics. So it's basically, so B is basically a shorter version of the entire underlined sentence, because it's also saying that humans are like trees, are like maple trees.
That's great. I love that. I definitely agree with B, but I didn't have an explanation. So that makes a whole lot of sense. And also, I don't think if I was going through, I would have automatically picked B. But if you go through elimination, that's very helpful most of the times. So we eliminated A because it's not talking about the women. It's talking about the trees and how some of them were giving out sap easily and some weren't. So A is out. And then C demonstrates how human behavior can be influenced. There's nothing about human behavior it's talking about the trees still. The trees are the subject of this sentence. And then D elaborates on an aspect of the maple trees that the women. So like we said, the women part is wrong because it's not the women evaluating, but the author evaluating what he could see. So B may seem kind of different, and this is because of the function, right? Remember, it's asking you for the function of the underlying sentence and not what the sentence is saying, right? An answer like A would be kind of explaining what the sentence is instead of what it's doing. So remember that every time you have to tie it to the main idea, which is why I love Jerem's explanation. He explained like the people as well, kind of tying it to the beginning, right? The women were testing the trees and seeing if sap would appear. So it has to be like grounded in the main idea of the passage. So every time you see function, always make sure that you're not just getting your answer from the sentence, because not asking what is this sentence, asking what is this sentence doing. And that's always going to be tied to the main idea of the passage. Yeah. So are there any questions or does anyone disagree with answer choice
That's
B?
fine.
Okay, great. Okay, so it's function. We move on to question 10, paired passage. Okay, so before we go into it, I just want to find out how you guys do your paired passages. Because I know some people, well, I guess this is different, but discussed in text 1. So does anyone have like a special approach for paired passages? Or do you just like read through it like, a normal passage?
Well, I just read like a normal passage.
Okay.
I read the question first, then I hit by the passages.
Okay. So I guess this is different because initially we would have like maybe 10 questions from paired passages, but here we just have one question. So it's either you read the question first or you read the passages first. Both are fine. Especially, I would advise you to read the passages first if you have a good memory, because the whole thing is you're trying to avoid going back and forth, So instead of like reading the passages and then reading the question and then going back, you can like read the question first, have whatever you're looking for, and then read the passages. So it's really up to you to decide. I'm always for reading the question first because I just love like reading with an objective in mind. But whatever works for you, works for you. And that's another thing, like approaches are going to differ. So try as much as possible to try different things because you never know what would what would be the best for you specifically. So the question says, based on the texts, how would however I pronounce the name, Bernfield and colleagues most likely respond to the conventional wisdom discussed in text 1. So this is an inference question because it's asking you the most likely response. Now, this is a trap for most people because it makes you feel like you have to like really reason, like really think about it, but the answer will be given to you in the passage. The whole thing is you just have to like pick it out and object and like, and like connect it or rephrase it based on the other text. So we're looking at something that's discussed in text 1 and what people in text 2 would say. So I would start with text 1 and then go to text 2. And we're looking for the conventional wisdom, which is even underlined over there. Okay, so we're going to read through it and then see what we think. Text 1 says, ecologists have long wondered how thousands of microscopic phytoplankton species can live together near ocean surfaces, competing for the same resources. According to conventional wisdom, one species would emerge after outcompeting the rest. So why do so many species remain? Ecologists' many efforts to explain this phenomenon still haven't uncovered a satisfactory explanation. So if I was doing this, I would first break it
Choice
down.
A.
Oh, you already have an answer. Okay, great. Let me put it in the chat so that we don't forget. Okay. So I would make sure that I really understand what is being said about this conventional wisdom even before going to the next passage. So we know we're talking about these species that can live together. But then conventional wisdom says one species should emerge. So this is all saying the conventional wisdom is that one species emerges after another. Okay, instead of like competing for the same resources. So now let's go to text 2 and see what that says about species outcompeting the rest. Okay, ecologist Michael Bernfield and colleagues have connected phytoplankton's diversity to their microscopic size. Because these organisms are so tiny, they are spaced relatively far apart from each other in ocean water and moreover experience that water as a relatively dense substance. This in turn makes it hard for them to move around and interact with one another. Therefore, says Bernfield's team, direct competition among phytoplankton probably happens much less previously than thought. Okay, so before we break it down, let's see what you guys think. A says, by arguing that it is based on a misconception about phytoplankton species competing with one another when we have two people for A. B says, by asserting that it fails to recognize the routine replenishment of ocean nutrients, prevents competition between phytoplankton species. B, by suggesting that their own findings help clarify how phytoplankton species are able to compete with larger organisms. D, by recommending that more ecologists focus their research on how competition among phytoplankton species is increased with water density. Okay, so we have two people for A. Does anyone want to explain?
Yes. You see, all right. First thing, conventional wisdom say it's like basically a survival of the fittest. However, according to Behenfield, there's more than enough room for survival. There isn't any need for competition. They're too far spaced out. Choice A agrees with this.
That's great. Thank you. So I love how you rephrased it because that will definitely help you. When you said it's survival of the fittest, that will help you like to filter out reading passage 2 because you see passage 2 is longer, than passage 1 and there's a lot going on. So if you already have that in mind, it's easy for you to pick out what you're supposed to get from passage 2. And that's that, as Audin said, they're far apart. So no need for competition. So I definitely agree with A. Yeah, that's great. Does anyone have any questions or does anyone disagree? Okay, great. So we're going to move to 11. And the question is, according to the text, why would a helicopter built for Earth be unable to fly on Mars? So this is a literal comprehension. So it's just asking you what's happening in the passage. And this should be the easiest in theory, but it's very easy to be misled because of the wording. And like I said previously, even one word is enough to make an answer choice wrong. So you get through this by being very, very detailed and don't try to add any information. Just focus on what's been given in the passage. So we already know what we're looking for. Why would a helicopter built on Earth be unable to fly on Mars? So the passage says in 2014, Amelia Cohn and her team at NASA set out to build a helicopter capable of flying on Mars. Because Mars' atmosphere is only 1% as dense as Earth's, the air of Mars would not provide enough resistance to the rotating blades of a standard helicopter for the aircraft to stay aloft. For 5 years, Cohn's team tested designs in a lab that mimicked Mars' atmospheric conditions. The craft the team ultimately designed can fly on Mars because its blades are longer and rotate faster than those of a helicopter of the same size built on Earth. Okay, so we read through the passage. A says, because Mars and Earth have different atmospheric conditions. B, because the blades of the helicopters... built for Earth. Sorry, A. Okay, great. I'll put that in the chat so you remember. B says because the blades of helicopters built for Earth are too large to work on Mars. B, because the gravity of Mars is much weaker than the gravity of Earth. And D, because helicopters built for Earth are too small to handle the conditions on Mars. Okay, so this is a very interesting question because I feel like elimination in this case would be a lot.
I'd go for choice D.
D. Okay, so we have A and D. Okay. So this is interesting because I feel like elimination would take you longer. So it's important for you to keep in mind that there's only one correct answer. So once you find it, then that's it. And if you trust yourself enough, you can simply move on after doing that. Did you not say something?
I'll go for choice A.
A. Okay, great. So we have A and D. Anyone want to explain their answer?
All right. It says atmospheric conditions.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Remember, they first says that the air of Mars is only 1% of Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and the air is more or less the atmosphere. So because of that difference, I conclude A.
Okay, so because of the atmospheric conditions, thank you. Anyone want to defend D?
Yes, I'd like to defend D.
Mm-hmm.
Where it says because helicopters built for Earth are too small to handle the conditions on Mars, and in the passage, it says that the ultimate design for the helicopter that could fly on Mars that the blades are longer, which means that the helicopter itself must be larger.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, so you bring out a very, very interesting point, right? You said the blades being short and the length of the blades could also potentially affect the size of the helicopter. So it is possible that D could be correct, but remember that everything has to be given to you in the passage. So that's an assumption, right? The fact that well, trying to correlate the length of the blades to the size of the helicopter. That's an assumption. We don't know whether that's actually a factor in determining the size of the helicopter. All we know is that the blades, wouldn't have enough resistance to the rotating blades. So that's just a very, very small, very, very tiny assumption, which could be true and is most likely true, but it hasn't directly been stated in the passage. And we know for a fact that A is correct because it's been stated right in the beginning, because Mars' atmosphere is only 1% as dense as Earth's. And then that gives way to the blade discussion. So there are two important things here. The first one is if you know A is the answer, everything else should be wrong. Right? Because you're only going to have one correct answer in all the answer options. And then the second thing is just like a very tiny assumption is enough to make you get the answer wrong. And that's what the College Board is counting on. Because this test is not supposed to be, ridiculously easy. Yeah, it's not supposed to be that easy. It's supposed to challenge you in some ways. So always make sure that you take word for word everything that's been given and make sure that you also go through all the options. I'm one person who always goes through all the options. Even though maybe I found A and I know A is correct, I'll go through all of them because if I find another one that's correct, then I know there's something wrong. Maybe I misjudged A or something like that. But yeah, anything on this question before we move?
Nope, moving right along.
Okay, great. I love it. I love it when there's a discussion going on. Okay, 12 is main idea. Asking for the main idea of the text. Remember, it's the subject plus what is being said about it. In West Africa, jails have traditionally been keepers of information about family histories and records of important events. They have often served as teachers and advisors too. New technologies may have changed some aspects of the role today, but jails continue to be valued for knowing and protecting their people's stories. Okay. A says, even though there have been some changes in their role, jails continue to preserve their community's histories. B, although jails, I have been reading this wrong. I have been reading this. I don't know if it's supposed to be jails or jallies. Okay, anyway, I'll just say jails. Although jails may have many roles, many of them like teaching best. Jails have been entertaining people within their communities for centuries. Wait, doesn't anyone know what a jali is?
No, first I've heard that.
Okay, well, anyway, yeah, I'll just keep saying jails. Technology can now do some of the things jails used to be responsible for. So anyone leaning towards any option, or are there any obviously wrong ones? Yeah, I think it should be jolly, like a kind of person. Yeah. Okay. Anyone leaning towards any option? Okay, we'll go through them together. So if we were to like skim through the passage, we know that jollies keep information, teachers and advisors, new technologies have changed some of what they do, but they are valued for keeping people's stories. So even though some things have
Yeah,
changed.
answer is I.
Sorry?
A. The answer is A.
A. Okay,
I
so we
go
have
for.
A. I didn't hear you, Jerome.
I said I'm going for choice A as well.
Okay, so we have two A's. Okay, does anyone want to explain?
Yes, ma'am. Certainly. All right. It first there. Yeah, I love how they use the word traditionally. They say traditionally have been keepers of information, and then that's they said it in the first part, and then it says later on it says now technologies have changed some aspects of the role, but jails continue to be valued for knowing and protecting people's stories. A agrees with this. It says even though some changes in their role, means it changes from just being a teacher now to an advisor. It gives the evidence on this.
Okay, great. I love that explanation. So it takes into account the first part of the passage that traditionally that's what they do, and the last part as well. Like even though there are new technologies, the role still continues. And that's the definition of the main idea, right? You have to take into account the entire text. It's like you're kind of summarizing everything in one sentence. So A is a great option. I feel like it's easy to kind of be misled um by D and let's see, let's go through them. B says, although they have many roles, many like teaching. Nothing was said about them liking teaching. It just says they've often served as teachers and advisors, so B is wrong because of the way it's worded. C, they've been entertaining people. I don't remember seeing anything about entertainment. Let's see. Teachers and advisors. Yeah, nothing about entertainment has been said in the passage. D says technology can now do some of the things they used to be responsible for. D is would easily mislead someone just because of the last sentence. But it's important to truly understand like what is being said, right? It says new technology may have changed some aspects. So it's not that it's taken over what they do. It may have just changed. So maybe instead of keeping like physical books, they now keep their information on a tablet. Like it's just some aspects that have changed, but they still have their role. They continue to be valued for knowing and protecting the people's stories. So it's very easy to be misled just because of these change some aspects. And especially if you rely on your own memory, it's easy to like say, oh yeah, D, instead of like going back to read what's been said. So in short, just make sure that you really pay attention to the small details in the wording of the passage because that will really help you. Yeah, that will really, really help you. Okay, anything on question 12 before we move?
No, ma'am.
Okay, 13, also main idea. It says in 1934, physicist Eugene Wigner posited the existence of a crystal consisting entirely of electrons in a honeycomb-like structure. The so-called Wiener crystal remained largely conjecture, however, until Feng Wang and colleagues announced in 2021 that they had captured an image of one. The researchers trapped electrons between two semiconductors and then cooled the apparatus, causing the electrons to settle into a crystalline structure. By inserting an ultra-thin sheet of graphene above the crystal, the researchers obtained an impression, the first visual confirmation of the Wiener crystal. A says researchers have obtained the most definitive evidence to date of the existence of a Winer crystal. B, researchers have identified an innovative new method for working with unusual crystalline structures. C, graphene is most important of the components required to capture the image of a Winer crystal. D, it's difficult to acquire an image of a Winer crystal because of the crystal's honeycomb structure. What do we think?
My answer is A.
Same.
A. Okay, we have 2 A's. Anyone have a different opinion? Okay, anyone want to explain A?
I'd like to do it.
You can go ahead.
Yes, and A says that researchers have obtained the most definitive evidence of the existence of the Winger crystal. And in the passage, it says that physicist Eugene Winger posited the existence of crystal containing electrons in a honeycomb-like structure. The so-called Winger crystal remained largely conjecture. However, until Feng Wang and colleagues announced it in 2021 that they had captured an image of one. What that means is that other than in 1934 to 2021, it has not been, the Winger crystal has not been seen by anyone else. That means that only the researcher Feng Wang and the colleges have obtained a visible existence or evidence that the Winger crystal existed.
Okay, great. I love that you went back to the beginning of the passage because remember, again, that's the definition of the main idea. It takes everything into context. So if you look from the beginning, everything is about this crystal, right? Like how it's honeycomb, like people haven't found evidence about it. And then now they have. So this is kind of like, it takes everything into account. The fact that it's the most definitive evidence. So before that, nothing was done. And it's still talking about the Wigner crystal. So if you remember when we were looking at a literal comprehension question like number 11, our focus was just which one is correct according to the passage, because that's what literal comprehension is, just like taking the passage literally. But for main idea, you also have to take into account that it's the main idea. And I emphasize that because for this one, there are some that there may be more than one that's correct. I put that in inverted commas. There may be one that's like correct based on the passage, but it's not the main idea. And that will make it wrong because you're not answering the question. So for main idea, taking 2 things into account: the fact that it should be the main idea, and also the fact that it should be correct according to the information given in the passage. Like if you look at see, does it explain what graphene does? Let's see. Semiconductors, yeah. So that's maybe semi-implied because it's like before this nothing was done and now they're using graphene. But that's one sentence in the passage. It says graphene is the most important of the components required to capture an image. So first of all, we don't even know if it's the most important component because that hasn't been said. And second of all, it's just one sentence in the passage. So that makes it wrong. That's not the main idea. B says researchers have identified an innovative new method for working with unusual crystalline structures. First of all, we don't know if this can even be applied to other crystalline structures. And secondly, that's not the main idea. That's just towards the end, where it now says, oh, they found a method of doing that. That's not the main idea of the entire passage. And then D, it's difficult, which it is. It took them a while to find it out. But that's not the main idea. So it's very important that you really keep in mind what is the main idea and how do I find the main idea. And a great way to do that is what Jerome did, like go back to the beginning of the passage and kind of skim through it, see what you're getting, what information you're getting throughout the passage. This one is more on the long side, but it's still really short compared to how long the passages were for the previous format of the SAT. Yeah. So any questions on this one? Okay, let's do one more. Okay. Yeah, this is a great. We haven't done an infographics question in a while. Okay, and the question says, which choice best describes data from the graph that support the researcher's conclusion? So this is a question that requires you to look at both the graph and the passage. So we're going to start with the passage. It says, it's right here, considering a large sample of companies Economics experts Maria Guadalupe, Julie Wolfe, and Raghuram Rajan assessed the number of managers and leaders from different departments who reported directly to a chief executive officer. According to the researchers, the findings suggest that across the years analyzed, there was a growing interest among CEOs in connecting with more departments in their companies. So basically, this is just kind of unnecessary. But anyway, they reported this information for the number of managers that across the years there was a growing mindset. So they wanted to connect with more department leaders. And the graph is always going to have a title. It says average number of individuals reporting directly to CEOs. So basically the passage is saying the CEOs wanted to connect with more. So it should agree. If it agrees, it means that the number should increase. The number of individuals that report directly to them should increase because like they're connecting with them more. Then you have managers and department leaders. And let's see, you're going to assess the number of managers and leaders who reported to a CEO. Okay, so we're taking both into account. And the key is also very important. We know that the light one is the managers, dark one is department leaders. Okay, so one amazing way to analyze infographics, because it can get overwhelming. One of the things you can do is try to look for a trend. Like in this case, we know that. See? Okay, great.
Yes, ma'am.
I also second that choice.
Okay, sorry?
I also choose choice C.
Okay, C. Great. We have 3 C's. Okay, so yeah, so the main thing is try to see if you can find a trend because it might get overwhelming. So try to see are they steadily increasing? Was there a year when it was really higher than the others? Because that will help you kind of filter out what's been given. Okay, so does anyone want to explain why they went for C?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It's all right. The main idea is that, according to the passage, is this: more people want to speak to department leaders than managers.
Mm-hmm.
C states this, as we can all see, in all 3 of them, the darker one was always higher in all 3 of them, and it's on the rising section. Means it's rising, not falling, not once. And it says the average number of department leaders reporting to their CEO was greater than the average number of members reporting directly to the CEO on the 3 periods. It means it's increasing on all 3 of them.
Okay, great. So we've established that C is definitely correct according to the infographic. Okay, so another thing that I want you guys to take into account is the passage. Remember, we're looking for something that supports the researcher's conclusion.
Could I explain?
Something?
Could I explain C in a different way?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So why I chose C is because as it clearly states in C, it says that the average number of department leaders reporting directly to the CEO is greater than the number of managers reporting directly to the CEO in each of the periods studied. What I used was that I used the key of the graph, like because the darker gray is the department leaders and the lighter gray is the managers. You can clearly see in all 3 studies that the darker gray bar stands tall above the light gray bar. That's what I used to determine my answer.
Okay, great. So again, we see that according to the infographic, it's correct. Let's see. I'm not fully convinced just because I'm trying to see. Remember, it says the information that supports the researcher's conclusion. So it's very important to take the researcher's conclusion into account. And the passage, I'm trying to see if the passage kind of differentiates between managers and department leaders, because they consider the large sample of companies, assess the number of managers and leaders from different departments. And then according to the researchers, they suggest, so this is the conclusion, there was a growing interest in connecting with more departments, and the managers and the leaders are from different departments. I don't know if you guys get it, but like both of them are of interest in this study because it's basically saying there's a growing interest in connecting with more departments, and it says they assess the number of managers and leaders from different departments. So there's no demarcation between which one is higher than the other, if that makes sense. It's just basically saying, how are you connecting with departments? And then they tested both managers and leaders from different departments. And the key of the graph, yes, says it's the average number of individuals reporting, but all of these, the managers and the department leaders, are all from different departments. And all of them rose, even though managers didn't rise so high, all of them were rising throughout the years. And if you look at option D, let's see. Oh, department leaders. This is just department leaders. A says the average number of managers and department leaders reporting directly didn't fluctuate from the 91 to 95 to the, no, that's not the main. So A is out. B says average number of managers reporting directly was highest. That's not the conclusion. Okay. I'm kind of stuck between C and D. I don't know. Does anyone kind of see D as an option, or is everyone still for C?
Well, yes. Why I would say that D is wrong is that I agree that it's speaking the truth about the fact that the department leaders rose over the three periods. But what it did state was that the department leaders studied were greater than the managers that are reporting to the CEO.
Yes, I can see. I think the issue is, yes, it is true,
What I'm
but
saying
is it the conclusion?
Yes, what I was saying is that D only half, more like only half represents the graph, while C represents the entire
Okay,
data included.
that makes sense. So I don't want to mislead anyone. So let's confirm what the answer actually is. I really think D is more accurate, even though C is correct. I feel like D is more in line with the conclusion. But let's see. Question 14. And we're still in section 1. And we can see the explanation too. I think I skipped it. Yeah, D. So let's read through it. It says, D is the best answer because it describes data from the graph that support the researcher's conclusion that there's a growing interest among CEOs in connecting with more departments in their companies. The graph shows the average number of individuals reporting directly to the CEOs during 3 different time periods. Yeah. Divided into managers and department leaders. Okay, yeah, it was almost, this part's not so important. But it says, thus, the average number of department leaders reporting directly to their CEO rose over the 3-period studies, which suggests that CEOs were connecting with more departments. Okay, so let's see why C, the explanation of C being incorrect. It says choice C is incorrect. Although it correctly describes a feature of the graph, the observation that more department leaders and managers are reporting to CEOs does not by itself address the question whether CEOs are connecting with more departments over time. To address that question, one needs to know whether the number of department leaders reporting to CEOs is increasing over time. Okay, so the major thing is just what is the conclusion, right? Because the conclusion doesn't necessarily differentiate between managers and department leaders. That's not the focus, in short, because it's kind of asking what supports the main idea of this short passage. So even though C is correct, it doesn't address, like there's nothing, if this whole passage was based on managers being different from department leaders, then C would be definitely the answer because it is accurate. But D is the one that most goes with the main idea of this short passage because that's the whole thing. The main thing is just, is there a demarcation? Because C is kind of comparing the two. So is this passage based on a connection between the two, or it's just talking about your eyes? And that's what D does. So I don't know. Does anyone disagree with D still?
No, I understand now.
All right, good. Infographics should be easy, but when you have to take 2 things into account, you have to make sure that you do, because it clearly says that supports the researcher's conclusion. So it means that that should guide you. The researcher's conclusion should be what guides you to the answer. Trust me, the College Board never makes a mistake in their phrasing or anything, because they really want you. If you weren't looking at the researcher's conclusion, C would be the answer. But once you just take it into account, D becomes the answer. So everything that they give you is like a clue to getting to the right answer. And yeah, the more that you practice and ask yourself, why did I get this question wrong? And especially reading through those explanations, because these are the test takers, who wrote this. So it means that this is their reasoning behind everything that they do. So the more that you practice and you question yourself, like, why did I get this wrong? What misled me? What should I stop doing or what should I continue doing? That would definitely like guarantee that you're actually improving. Because even on the final day, you'll be practicing, right? You're going to have a paper that you've never had before. So how beneficial is it going to be, if you're not actually analyzing what you get wrong? It will just be like another practice test. So always question yourself, always ask, why did I get this wrong? What can I do to do it better? And even like what I used to do when I was practicing is I would mark everything that I guessed on or everything that I wasn't so sure on, because it means that I didn't fully understand what I was doing. So yeah, make sure that you have like a mistake approach. Always try to correct your mistakes, because that's what in the end would like drop your grade, I would say. Yeah, so just to go through what we've done today, we had a lot of main idea questions, and people, yeah, you guys did really well on those. I'm really happy because I remember the last time we were going through main idea, it was taking time for people to even say like what they think the answer is. So it shows that you guys are practicing, which is amazing. Like that will really, really help you. And speed is also your friend because time is also of the essence when you'll be taking this exam. Yeah. So remember that main purpose should be implied throughout the passage. Don't just get it from one point. And you're not only looking for something that's correct, you're looking for something that captures the essence of the passage. And there's only going to be one that does both. That is both correct and captures the essence of the passage. Function, we said, is tied to the main idea. Don't just get it. Don't just define what the sentence is. Always tied to the main idea. And there's only going to be one that does that. One that's correct and one that accurately ties the sentence to the main idea of the passage. We looked at the paired passage and we said it's a good idea to like rephrase or like fully understand what you're looking for before you go and look for the opinion in the next passage. That really helped us a lot. And yeah. For literal comprehension, we're just looking for what's correct. And there's only going to be one that's correct. And no need to make any assumptions that are not in the passage. Everything is given to us. And then, yeah, we had more main idea. We had a bunch of main idea questions. Infographics, we said you have to make sure that you read the question because some infographics won't require you to look at the passage, some will. So always make sure that you read the question and get whatever you need. For this one, we needed the researcher's conclusion. So make sure you fully understand whatever you need. And as you go through the graph, get the main idea. Don't get like lost in all the details. Just look for, oh, is it increasing? Is it decreasing? Was it very high in 1 year? Was it very low in 1 year? Or things like that. That will really help you with infographics. Yeah, so do we have any questions or contributions or anything before we end the session? It doesn't have to be about reading. Okay, so I will stop recording. Okay, so for those who joined later, or maybe if you just want to go through and try to practice, pause the video, find your answer, things like that, it will be uploaded to the YouTube channel as soon as I can do that. It takes some time to be able to do that, but I'll upload it and let you guys know in the group when it's there. And yeah, thank you guys for coming. I really enjoyed the participation. It's we learn so much more, from actually actively analyzing, because you learn more about your answers, your thought process, and that can really help you. So continue doing that. Maybe even amongst yourselves or even as you go through a paper, like try to convince yourself because that will really help you. Yeah.
Gee, thanks.
Thank you. So I'll stay for a few minutes in case anyone has a question or something. But yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks for the session. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks for your time and have a great day.
You too. Thanks. Cyrus, did you have a question?